Welcome everyone to Hunt the Habitat. A great dog and a shotgun will only get you so far in the uplands. In this podcast, Ann Jandernaw helps us to attain a more in-depth understanding of the birds we love to hunt, their habits, their habitat, and how those change through the year and through the hunting season. Hunt the habitat, find the birds. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our latest edition of Hunt the Habitat with Ann Jandernaw. I'm Steve Blazer, and Ann, it seems like every time we open this podcast, we're talking about weather.
Yeah, weather or my dog's misbehaving because I'm doing something and not paying attention to them. Brats.
Well, it's not the weather I had in mind, but that's just the fun of having puppies around.
These aren't puppies. These are adult brats.
Oh, these are the adult brats. They're professionals.
Yeah, they practiced a lot. And I did. Like we said, I told you, I said, I got the spoon early. It's not a good sign when I go grab the spoon before the podcast has even started. So I'm all set to wave it and to be threatening without you guys knowing it.
You really need to take a picture of that spoon and put it on your Facebook page so that the rest of us know. Because this is an imposing spoon. This isn't just some little thing.
And I don't cook with it either.
No.
But I'll tell you what, it could leave a dent in something. And no, I don't hit the dogs with it.
But weather's an issue up there. I mean, and again, not to be repetitive, because the last three podcasts we've kind of opened with that, but there's a lot of rain up there.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking at, let's just say, a 5-day analysis, our areas of concern, well, it's Minnesota. Parts of Minnesota got 5 to 6 up in the central to northeast into the Arrowhead region, and some areas were 4 to 5, but most areas got 2 to 3. Now, 2 to 3 doesn't really bother me. They do have a lot of swamps there, and that's one thing. And they do have areas that have sand, pretty good swaths that got the 5 to 6, and in the core of a couple of them, it went 6 to 8. So these are small spots. It's like a local issue. But then you come over into western part of Wisconsin, and that's basically was just a 2 to 3. That was no problem.
Okay.
And then in the upper peninsula of Michigan, you're looking at probably down by Marinesco, there's a swath that comes up into Berglund, Bruce's Crossing, Canton area, and the farther east you go in Bruce Crossing area, Sandy area. It looks like it more concentrated in those areas, and then it went in over to Mass City and Noggin, and then going north to Houghton Hancock. And there's a small area that's running probably from Crystal Falls, heading over toward Witch Lake, and north of Amasa, and north of, actually starting, Amasa and Covington might have reached a little bit of that, but probably north of Sagola, and all the way up into Marquette. And then the lower part of Michigan looks really good. So far, Vermont and New York looks good, and then it's just the right amount of rain out in the Northeast. So time will tell.
Yeah, that's great news. And you and I talked a little bit about this offline, but the combination of the heat that we have had and the rain has a definite effect on the broods, doesn't it?
You have those days where it's hot and windy, and those birds will go down into the swamps. A lot of people ask me, especially in July, going to dogs, where are the birds? They're in the swamps. This hot weather will push them into the swamp sooner. And so the hen may be down on the edge of the swamp or tag alder area that's dry, and maybe just a little ways over is moisture, depending on whether it's a runoff area. But they nestle down for the night, and in comes the storm around 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, or 9 or something like that, and it's dark, and it's just pouring. So you don't know what happens to those chicks. If they're old enough, no problem, and they can fly and they can move. It's just as long as they don't try to go in the wrong direction. But in the dark, where do you go? So Those are just little things to think about because they have to then transition out of that area a little ways to get away from any runoff. So in some ways, if it's been a little bit wet, it's already pushed those birds up a little bit higher in elevation. But let's just say we were completely dry. We're really in a dry, like a pre-drought. Then the range that they can go more into that area that's typically a lot more moisture. And so when it rains, it fills up quickly. So the hatches, the farther north you go, the hatches are later. So like right here where I'm at, the birds that I'm seeing, they're flying. I did see one hatch where the birds were pretty small. They weren't flying. They were still running around on the ground. And then there's another brood I've seen twice now, and they're flying like 15, 20 feet. They don't look that big, but they can fly.
Okay.
And sort of a funny little story is I'd been watching for these birds and just happened to time it just right. And there they are, the mother's doing the crossing guard thing. And here comes two UTVs. And there was a chick in the road. And so I'm waving my hands to get them to stop. And they stopped. And the mother came out, did like a circle almost with her head down like a road runner, like, get off this road. And the chick's like, okay. I mean, her neck was stretched out and she was as low and just going, these people are just leaning forward watching the whole thing. And the other UTV had come out more into the center part of the road. This is a forest road. And they're watching it, and you could tell they were having a good time seeing this. And then it was like popcorn going off because whatever mother said got everyone to move even more. It's like birds going up all over the place. And they drive by and thumbs up. It's like, cool. They were being entertained by chicks and a very fierce mother grouse.
So pretty much mostly the broods are pretty well developed at this point.
In my area, yes.
Okay.
Don't ask me what it's like in northern Minnesota. I mean, I'm talking way north, getting up closer to the Canadian line.
Got it.
They should be, because everyone's had really dry spring because of winter being non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
So, time will tell.
Yeah. When the states do their drumming counts, when do those typically get published? That's not for a while yet. I mean, the counts are all done. Their counts are all in. Mm-hmm. But when can we expect to start seeing some of the results? And I understand there's limitations to the accuracy of that stuff, but how long is it before they start to publish that?
Usually it comes out in July.
And when you're looking at those numbers, how much stock do you put in? I know it's good information, but it's not the be-all, end-all. How much stock do you put in? Because an awful lot of people look at those numbers pretty carefully.
Well, it's so much about the day. I don't put as much stock in it as the fact that I look at where they did the counts and I know where the habitat is. And yeah, I know where they're doing, or they're doing the drumming counts that you can see in one area. And it's like, okay, basically, let's just say hypothetically, if you don't realize that they don't do counts Jump River down in Southern Price, they do. They may have changed it by now, but that's typically one of the areas. Mm-hmm. And so that has good habitat down there. And it doesn't matter what side of the river you're on. So the big thing is that the counts, they're important, but really they're indicative of good habitat. And the other aspect is that I remember that one, I probably mentioned it before, there was ungodly amount of counts. And no one takes into factor that grouse will drum twice, multiple times in 4 minutes if he's got a hen around. That right there will run up your numbers. So, yes, it's nice to know. Mm-hmm. And if they do it on a bad day, everything's going to not look like the norm. If the wind is high and they can't hear it, that's another aspect. There's so many variables to it. So I don't put much stock in it. I look for the habitat. I look for what the spring looks like and what the winter was like for them, how difficult it was, and how many days did we have below zero, which this past year we didn't have that many. So the hens would have come into the spring probably in the best shape that they've ever had. I mean, when you look at the vegetation, like the Veg Dry map, and you look at the entire U.S. right now, and for June 16th, it looks great. There's little areas that are getting started with droughts, but they're getting rain periodically enough to keep the drought away. So I don't know what to expect, and I am not going to call and say, oh, it's going to be great, or it's this, or it's that, because there's so many different areas and so many different variables. But I think overall the birds have a pretty good start.
What else are you seeing out in the woods right now?
Besides millions of mosquitoes? Oh my
Well,
God.
the chicks got to eat something, right?
Well, then they're going to be fat.
Yes. I was up camping, my wife and another couple. We did a little bit of hiking, and we just about got carried away. We were hiking along the Peshtigo River. We should have expected it a little bit because you're right next to a river, and there's some standing water around because of that, and it had been rainy. But oh my goodness, it was thick.
Well, I just hope we have enough birds to eat all these freaking mosquitoes because the dragonflies aren't out. You look for dragonflies to swarm and kill off the mosquitoes. I'm not seeing dragonflies. I don't know if they're on freaking strike or whatever. I was out this morning training with the puppies, and even though I sprayed, they were horrible. The other thing is, if you wear a head net thing out there, those puppies, they spend time barking at me because of it. And it's like
Who are you?
That. I remember I went to feed one time. This is a few years back, and it ran into the doghouse. Whatever. So I don't wear that typical baseball cap with a bunch of bug spray. And it was one of those mornings we've got rain coming in. So anytime that you have rain coming in, the mosquitoes are nasty before it rains, and there's no wind right now.
You out seeing any woodcock right now?
No, I'm not in.
You're not in the woods, so yeah.
I'm not wanting to be there to find the woodcock and find even more mosquitoes. I'll deal with them later.
You don't want to be down on the tag elders right now?
Yeah, they're not really on the tag elders, but I can tell you one thing: they've been in my blueberry patch.
Really?
Well, I put a bunch of dirt out because I planted blueberries, and there's all these bill holes in it. And I get a few little footprints, so they've been checking out the blueberry patch. As long as they don't eat blueberries, we're okay. I'm not sharing.
Cookies or blueberries. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. They've been checking out that fresh dirt there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll buy a bunch of worms and stick them in there for them.
Well, you mentioned you were out training puppies. What are you doing right now?
Recall. I want my recall really good with these pups and rapport with the pups and not jumping on me and coming back when I call them before we go into the woods. There's a couple I'm already taking into the woods because they're worried, but a lot of them just came back last week. Mm-hmm. Actually, the end of last week is when so it's not that they haven't been here that many days. So I always let the pups hang close until I know that they're going to listen to me. And then the other ones that have been here for a little bit, they're already going into the woods for runs. And then there's 3 more coming in, and then that'll be it for the year. So it's basically the whole litter's back.
And how old are these pups?
They were born February 23rd.
Okay.
But we've introduced the collar. I have a dog collar that I use that has both, of course, the stimulus, and then it has the vibrate. And typically with puppies, this is the way I work it. It's voice, and if that doesn't work, then it's vibrate.
Okay.
Typically, that always works. And once in a while, it might be just a slight nick, the type that makes them turn around and look.
Sure.
Because they're hitting that stage where, no, this is more fun. I want to go this way. And depending, if there was a bad situation, I want them to make sure that they come back to me very quickly. There isn't an option here. You come. Mm-hmm. And I have the distraction of all the other pups barking at them and them wanting to go back to their siblings and run around in front of them and basically show off. And then it's like, oh, yeah, you're out there. Yeah, goodbye. So I'm using a distraction to show that, hey, there's no discussion in this. You come when I call.
Come is non-negotiable.
You're right. You're not harsh on these pups. I've got one named Willie. He's the smallest pup. I was really shocked at how small he was. And I thought, oh, my word. I don't know if you're going to make it. I just kept putting him on the mom to nurse, regardless. And you could see some of the other ones where their bellies are big. I was like, okay, you don't need to eat. You go over and lay down. And I cover him up and then go to sleep. And then I kept putting him on. Like, for every time one of the big ones ate, Willie would eat once or twice more. And he made it. And everything went really well. But he is the most determined pup I've ever seen. I saw that when he was little. The bigger ones, even when they're first born, they were pushing him out of the way. He couldn't get to feeding. So I had to make sure he was getting food along with a couple other little ones. And they're all fine now. Of all the puppies in the whole litter, that is the most determined pup and the most independent. He's the hardest one to get attention because he has other ideas and he learns really quick and gets bored really quick. I have some that would do it all day and come to you. And he's like, no, we've done this already. That's it.
When you talk about that, you talk about a strong-willed, independent puppy like that. My guess is that you and most breeders try to match up dogs with owners. What kind of owner are you looking for a dog like that?
This pup will not be a huge setter.
Mm-hmm.
And this pup's headed out to the mountains of Washington State on the east side.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to be scrappy, which works perfect for mountains. And he'll hunt ruffs and probably other grouse as well up there. But his muscles will be lean, which you don't want a big, huge, muscular dog in that type of environment. I like to see a very agile, athletic dog and more of a lean muscle than bulk. And he's not going to carry the extra weight on his body to really pound those joints, because those joints are going to get worked out big time out there. So you want a lighter dog to go that way, and a scrappy dog. And he's scrappy. Not scrappy as in fighting with his siblings, but determined, very determined pup, but extremely loving. I mean, once you get him in your lap, he just melts and he's all quiet.
Yeah, you talk about come and that it has to be, or here, whichever it is you use, and that it has to be non-negotiable. That's one of the conversations I think sometimes we hunters have to have with our spouses. It's like, don't use that word unless you are going to enforce it.
Yeah, no flybys.
No flybys. We had a little fun at our house one time because it was raining a little bit outside, and I have one of my dogs likes to kind of patrol the perimeter looking for rabbits and squirrels and whatever it is that she likes to point and chase. And she was sitting right out on the property line, and we have an invisible fence. So, and she's sitting there, and my wife called her in. And it was funny at the time because she said, come. And I said, oh, wait a minute. You use the magic word. I said, if she doesn't come, you got to go out there in the rain and go get her. So you have to pick your spots. So, and I'm the one that went and got her, but because she was just sitting there glued on a rabbit that was off the property. Now she won't come in. Now you got to go, and you got to demonstrate the fact that no, come means you will come back, rain or shine.
Yep. Yeah. It's there's no negotiating on that one.
No.
And then the other pups that are going outside the fence right now, we're just going through the woods working on range, and the range is easy. You're moving into the point of getting them to sort of hang out in front of you, and then if you shift, that they shift, but they don't have to come in. So that's where those little pups are at. haven't done scenting yet, but I will pretty soon.
Mhm.
And just put some scent down. It's been so wet that it's just a mess. And if the sun comes up and it's going to be a cloudy day, that's great, because then it won't warm up as quick. But if you have one of those mornings where, like, I was out at 6 o'clock and the sun came up really quick, and so did the mosquitoes. As soon as that sun hits that foliage, the humidity goes up, the mosquitoes come out, and it's just a mess. So it's funny. You get down to the last pup, and it's like, where are these mosquitoes coming from?
Hey, you brought something up that's kind of interesting. When you talk about getting your pups to shift with you when you change directions, what's your technique for doing that? It's always interesting. A lot of people have different ways of doing that.
Well, I don't use any check cords, and
Mhm.
I'm not. When, like, even right now, when I'm working with those pups to come,
Mhm.
I'm always going to a different spot. They go away from me a little bit, and they go to turn around, and I'm not there, because that's what's going to happen in the woods. So all of a sudden, instead of hearing a call from, like, the left side behind them, I'll be on either straight back or on the right side. They're searching for me, and eventually they'll get to know where I'm at most of the time. So you see the check-in going on, and that's how I build the check-in process. I want them to keep track of me as much as I keep track of them. And it's like when you have an adult dog out casting, and as he's going across the trail, it's almost like you just see a slight shift of the head, and that dog knows where you're at. It's just like, okay, I'm just making sure you're still there. And I work with that bond. So I'm just basically shifting. And then when I call these pups, and you got to remember, I'm sort of chopped liver right now, because it's like, where's the owner?
True.
So I don't usually use any treats, but I'll put a little kibble in my pocket. So I want to, as quick as possible, become their best friend. Not only the fact that they get to go with me and go outside, but that, oh, well, if I come back, and of course most of them are coming back and trying to jump on you, and we're working on that, the down. Or they try to get behind you and jump from behind you. So I'm working on all that to try to, like, no, we don't need this nonsense. This is ridiculous. And just working at being polite, coming when called, and go back out. I don't care that you go back out and to look for me. So really, when you look at this, there's a lot of little things that are all going on at once. When you're training, you just don't break it into, I'm going to train for come only. No, don't waste that time just for doing that. Add in some stuff, and add in commands, add in a whistle, like a one long whistle. Like, I'll whistle to these pups, and I hold that whistle for a while. It's enough to get their attention, and then it's enough to bring them back. But if I see them trying to ignore the whistle, then as soon as they turn their head and take one step, I hit the vibrate. And they'll whip around on me and start to come back. You can also very quickly determine which ones are the most stubborn. And most of them aren't. They just want to be with you. And owners have all worked with them recalling, but there's a few of them that got away with doing flybys, and I call it the aerial assault, the body slam. So when you get after them, some of them might throw a little snit fit. I'll just pick them up and take their feet away from them, in other words. And what that does is they're out of control then. And when you pick them up and their feet aren't touching the ground, they can't do anything. They just hang there like, no one's done this to me. And they just totally stop. And I get after them a little bit, and then I'll put them back down. I'll pet them, get them calmed down, get them back to feeling like, I guess I'm okay. And then off we go again. So I'll do all that before I do the knee. You don't realize, one, how quick your knee's coming out, but two, they'll bounce off of it. literally. And you don't want to do that to a pup. So,
Okay.
and when a puppy comes to you when they're little, if you can, kneel down. Put yourself down at their level and
Okay.
your hands out and move your hand just a little bit. So there's just a little movement, because that movement with the hand, just a little bit, is enough to draw their attention to a movement, which of course puppies are always looking at anything that moves. And then you've got the voice. It's got to be a great experience when they come back to you, not like, oh no, I'm in trouble again.
Okay. When you are training, I'm going to draw a differentiation here between come and simply, you're too far out, I want you to be closer.
You turn where you want them to hold that line, so to speak. And when they're puppies, I mean, we're talking a quarter of gun range.
Yeah.
By the end of 6-7 months. I don't believe in letting them out so far. That if they're doing that, the next push is like half. The next push will be 3/4. The next push will be full gun range. The next push is out of gun range. The next push is out of bell and tone range. You can't put all those levels or those jumps into 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
You structure all this by what the puppy has accomplished and will do it well, and that you can also make sure that they're doing it well. I tell anyone that gets a pup from me, we talk about what they're going to do for a puppy pen and how it starts. And you use that pen so that you're not creating a big world for that pup to run all over in. If you want the pup to hang at a certain range, set the pen up. So I have guys say that I've got an acre for them to run in. I'm thinking that's a disaster waiting to happen. Now the pup's going to self-hunt for itself. But they thought it was a great thing. And so we have a discussion and say, no, the puppy's not going to be running in that. You're going to keep that puppy close. You're going to build it a pen that's actually keeps its world small. It can run around in it. It can have fun. But when you take the puppy out of that pen, it's the two of you doing something together. And it's not doing it on its own, and then it doesn't need you. And all you have to do is say that, need you. And it's like, oh, yeah, bad. Because if you let them do what they want, they become independent extremely fast. If you've got a confident pup, it'll just keep building on that confidence till it becomes obnoxious. Because there's nothing that has checked that rate of confidence that's being built. And it's best to build the confidence to one level, let it work on it at that point right there just for a little bit, then go and build the confidence again. It's like taking steps. But you're using each step as an education. Education takes a little bit of time. And as you practice it and everything and you get to another level, you make sure they're doing each level accordingly to what they need to be.
Well, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And it's a way to establish, getting back to range, if there's a complaint that some of us have about our dogs, especially the pointing dogs, it's range.
Yeah, and the thing is, everyone wants to blame the dog for it. And yes, genetics can play an issue with that. But okay, I'm working with some dogs, bloodlines that are the best in Europe. One of my main studs' brother was the 2023 European champion. It doesn't get any faster than that. And they're covering humongous amounts of ground over there. And all his pups have the ability to do that. But here's the difference. If you let them do what they want, you're going to be the one running behind that dog or hacking the dog, trying to keep up with it. And you're going to end up doing nothing but push birds and then educate the birds on how to run even more.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how you hunt, at least in my book. Hunting is supposed to be stealth, not chasing on foot the dog and the bird. I just don't believe in it. Because all you do is have the birds learn to find one area and then they fly out the back end of pines. Now, what type of lesson did you just teach that dog?
Mm-hmm.
You taught the dog how to push grouse. And when they go so far and they're flagging, their tail's flagging, but you right though, with the tail's flagging and everything, that means that bird just went through there. That's it. And has not paused. There's no way to move around that bird. There's no way to block that bird because your dog is learning to push the bird. So what you want to do, if you want to hunt stealth-wise, quiet-wise, and not be losing your breath out there chasing the dog and watching the GPS, is you keep the dog close. It's not that you have to keep it that way for the rest of its life. But if you start it that way, you can reel it out as you see fit. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to undo what you did. So with my lines, it's really important because I have dogs with Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Porsche, all that under the hood. I mean,
from the same countries.
From those countries. I have that.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting aspect of that's a whole nother story, what those dogs go through over there to become a champion. It's a matter of managing the dog from the start on. Because what you let that pup do in the beginning, in these first 6-7 months, to 8 months even, is what that dog will ultimately become. If you let it run big, it's going to run big. Mm. And if you do the yo-yo effect, that doesn't help either. Because if they can run big at home and you expect them to stay close in the woods, they don't know the difference. But if you have them fenced in at home and then they learn that they go out of the fence and they're spending time with you and this is the range, you're starting that at day one. I mean, I know these are a few little crazy steps in there, but you'll save yourself a lot of headaches in the long run. And having a dog that hunts with you. Now, if you want a dog that's out ranging really far, then forget what I said. Just go do what you want. And it's not that I'm expecting people to do, oh, she said this, she said that. No, you guys are all your own individuals, but this is what I do.
Right. But you're making a great point here. The point is range is established pretty early in the process.
And consistency. That's huge. Consistency. And the other thing is, you're responsible for that consistency and you're responsible for the range. And I think a lot of people think it's only the e-collar where you hack them or something of that nature. It doesn't have to be that way. Like I said, my bloodlines are extremely fast. But people that are coming and getting pups from me that I train or I spend time showing them what to do and they follow it. And I'll show them a video of one of the lines and their mouths about drop because they're like, oh my word, they run that big? So that's what you've got in that bloodline. Now, it doesn't have to, let's go out and look at one. He says it's totally opposite. Why? Because you train them for what you want. And that starts from day one when you bring them home. It starts what you allow them to range. And you don't let them range on their own. You do it together and you set the distance and you are consistent with that distance for quite a while. And you just turn the dog. If the dog starts to get out too far, you just turn it. You're talking about what I'm doing with these puppies right now? I start to see them go out too far and I'm shifting. So they're looking for me. That's all the basic part of the foundation for range. I'm calling them back. I'm not letting them get out far. I'm not letting them build up that head of steam where they want to just fly.
And you're teaching them to follow your direction, get out quarter.
And to check in.
Yes.
To check in as well.
There's a lot going on here.
Yes. Oh, there's a ton of stuff going on here. I'll also carry my other collar with me. That's got a 1-inch band because these little puppy collars are like the electronic collars are only a half. And I need it basically for the vibrate in a case of an emergency that I can get that pup back. So those are the 1/2 inch. So I carry a 1-inch one over on the other side, and I've got another remote for that. So I'll even use the tone on that to bring them back in, or the tone to help them relocate. But for the most part, my dogs are far enough out, and I guess I whistle halfway decent, that I don't say a whole lot to my dogs. Once we've got this down, it becomes silent.
Mm-hmm.
And they know to look for me. And they know to go out so far, and they stop and turn and look. And basically, a 1-year-old dog, and I was using this particular dog for showing off to clients of what my dogs can do. And it would go so far out, and she says, "Why is it stopping looking back?" I said, "It's testing me right now. It's either, can I go out farther, or are we going this way?" And I'll typically will shift and then refocus that dog instead of let it go straight forward away from me. Because it was just testing the situation. She's a phenomenal dog.
Okay.
But it's setting that foundation to get a dog like that. This is the dog I could have guided with.
Wow.
That's the level that she was at 1 year. But I didn't let her out fast. I didn't give her more free range. I sort of held that box and got all the commands, get all the work on birds done, the shooting done, all of this other stuff done. And then basically I went and slowly reeled it out so that when she showed at 1 year old, she was closer to 3/4 of gun range. But I could trust her because the foundation was so focused at an early age. It's not just going out and working on come. It's going out and working on shifting and looking, checking in. It's going out and putting a tone with it when you recall them. It's going out and letting them know what a vibrate is if they're going to ignore you. And it's going out, and when they come back to you, you spend time with them. You just don't get up and then walk away again. You make it a pleasant time. You take time, because you're not only working on that, you just, right there, you're working on a timeout. You're working at timeout, because how many times are you in the woods and the dogs just want to keep hunting and to heck with you? And
Okay.
you've got a gun malfunctioning, or something broke, or you got to adjust a shoelace or whatever. But how many times you hear, "I can't get that dog in, it wants to keep hunting." And there went another bird, there went another bird. or at the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
They just learn to settle and to be with you. You don't want them pushing you around. They want to go hunting, but you need a calmness as well. So you're trying to do a balance there. But I have to say, it was very hard trying to do timeouts this morning with mosquitoes after you. It was bad. It felt like a pincushion.
And that was with the spray.
Yeah, spray, no bug netting, but it was bad.
I'm just trying to get over the mental imagery of you wearing the mosquito net over your head and carrying around the spoon and just walking around. It just sounds like a really scary image.
Smart ass.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Wait till you come up and visit.
Oh, hey, can I throw one more variable at you? I mean, this is really a great discussion of range and some of the things that you want to accomplish. But many of us right now, especially right now, we are confined to designated dog training areas. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can't take our dogs out in the woods. If you're trying to do what you are doing, but you're trying to do it in an open field, which is what most designated dog training areas are, does that change the approach? I suspect a lot of it's the same, but does it change much?
Well, you're going to end up with an increase in speed when they're out in the open fields like that. Because they want to stretch out. And it's going to be definitely a little more difficult, because your speed will increase. Anytime you hit the open areas, the speed hits. What does a dog do when it comes out of the woods and hits the trail and makes a right-hand corner to go up the trail? boom, the afterburners want to come on.
Okay.
So you probably want to keep turning them a little bit. And it's not just a straight line.
Mhm.
You want to keep turning them. So straight line, then turn left. Straight line, turn right. Straight line, turn. And what are you doing? Left, right,
Okay.
left, right. And then arch them in big circles type of thing. Right there, you're working on the connection of them being in checking for where you're at, voice command, and just keeping them where you're at. Now, as soon as you can get into the woods, even if it's a non-productive woods, so to speak, then you draw them back in and you set the range again. But I always tell people, if they can find someone that has even just a pocket woods someplace, get them into that. It's not that there's woods that you go into and you're not going to find a grouse.
Right.
You're not near any area where there's going to be a woodcock or whatever, and it's a private land, and just that's what I would do. But everyone has their different choices that they make.
Right.
It's the distance that, in the end, there has to be an acceptance of where you want them to stay, and not this yo-yo effect.
All right.
So it's harder the farther south you go. What I have here makes life easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know I have puppies that could fly. So if you've got those in your bloodlines, keep the world small. Slowly reel it out. Don't give them everything at once, because you're going to regret it.
Okay.
If you want a close working dog. If you don't want a close working dog, let him go.
This is really applicable to a lot of people, because there are a lot of really great breeders, but they're out west, or they're in Kansas, or they're in Indiana, and these are quail dogs, and these are pheasant dogs. The lions are, and now you want to take a puppy from there and you want to turn him into a grouse and woodcock dog. What you're saying is really applicable to an awful lot of people.
I think sometimes, especially to someone that's new, it's, how do I put it? I remember when I first got started, I hear a lot of people say, how many champions are in your lines? And this was when I was working mainly with U.S. dogs. And it wasn't about, to me, it was never about the champions. It was more about their ability to adapt, their ability to listen. Are they willing to be at a range? And I took LHU pointers and made them work where I wanted them to. But I remember I got a LHU pointer that had run out of Kansas. And it was some of the foundation stuff for wheelie. And this was a big pointer. And that was my first guide dog.
Wow.
And I had to undo the fields. This was just an extremely tough dog. And I guided with that dog, and it kept it at 3/4 gun range. But I had to work at it. And I found what made the difference to the dog, where he showed no response. But it was more of just a little tickle is all it took. And then repetition, because I had to hold him in a box or he was going to be gone. He turned into eventually a dog that I was so proud of, and he was a phenomenal guide dog. He had canny sense for where the birds were. Bean was his name, and big, lovable dog. If you sat down, he thought your lap was his. He would just lean up and against you, and next thing he'd fall over into your lap. He'd just have a way of keeling over, but he was a wonderful dog, and he would stay where I wanted him to stay. And after we got through that tug of war that goes on, and it took me about, I had 45 to 50 hunts, and I bet it was half of the season. I worked and worked and worked, and finally he started to say, oh, you don't want me out there anymore. Well, that's what I did all my life. I did that from a puppy. And he eventually adapted. His ability to almost like talk to you in a way. This dog would go when we'd be coming back and it was getting hot. And I probably told the story where he would get up by this rock in this one area constantly, every time, that overlooked an area down below. You would stand there like a statue. Beautiful picture. I actually had a picture of that. And he would turn and look at me. And he'd look down and he'd look back at me. And it was like, come on, Mom, can't we go down there? There's birds there. And finally, after this all happening, and I had some clients from Pennsylvania that would come out and spend usually 10 days with me for many years. I remember Dave saying, I think he wants to go down there. One of them, I think it was Dave. I don't know if it was Ron, but so we went down there and we had been missing birds. It was so cool because what had happened is the birds in the first part of the morning had gone up higher. And then as the heat of the day came in, they went down low. And they're on the edge of where the aspen goes into the cedar and the tags and all that gnarly stuff. And the other interesting part is as the sun would go over, they would be on the backside of the hill. So then the sun wasn't as bad on that side there for them. And we'd run that strip up along this wetland drainage area. We'd get close to the end and I'd put one of the guys out on the logging road. And birds would just go up and come down, go up, come down. Somebody would be hollering, there's one coming your way.
Followed by damn, or...
Once in a while you'd hear that, or the guy would say, did you get it? Yes. And the guy was a great shot. But it was always fun to hunt with them. And it was just comical at times. But Bean was quite the dog, and his daughter Rain was just as good. And it was a real interesting learning experience. And that was my first guide dog. And so Bean ended up being a once-in-a-lifetime dog. He was one of those dogs that when he went on point, if he didn't move after the first flush, there was more birds. And he wouldn't move. And he's one that I had to really work with how quickly he broke into the next point. And we would have to adjust that a little bit. But in the end, and Timber was another one that those dogs would not move if there was multiple birds there. And clients weren't used to that. Okay, the bird flushed. Why isn't your dog moving? I said, because there's more birds. It's like, really? I'd say, I'm going to take a couple steps here. And I'll go another one. So, but it was always fun.
This started as a simple discussion about what you're doing right now with your puppies, but it turned into a great discussion about range and how you can control even a high-powered dog. Again, looking at the pedigrees that you have, and very applicable to what other people are running into out there.
I think I've been stunned a couple times when people that the dog should just stay there at that range, but you also have to run the dog. So that's part of it, is that you have to manage the dog. And if you're consistent, you'll stop managing somewhere around 2.5, depending on how much you work with the dog and how many experiences the dog has had. But if you're inconsistent, it will take longer, a lot longer. And so much of it is what you do with that pup and the expectations you set with that pup is what's going to make all the differences. Keep their world small, because you can do more with them and mold them better if you keep the world small and then slowly reel it out. Okay, so the child rides on a tricycle up and down the driveway. You don't say, oh, you can go to town. So, bad analogy, I don't know, but it's sort of what I think about. My parents didn't let me go down to town on the tricycle.
But more importantly, if you sent the child to town all the time and then suddenly restrict the child to the driveway, the child's going to struggle with that. So it gets back to your conversation about consistency. But really, this turned out great because we didn't expect to go quite this deeply into range. And we don't want to chase our dog for a point in the grouse woods 175 yards away. And especially if you're working on a new puppy now, and so many of those puppies they're getting to the point where you're working on this sort of thing. This is really great. There's a lot to be learned here.
Good. Well, I hope it helps. And if you have questions, go to our website, www.mobilehuntingmaps.com, and then tap on Upland, and then go down there, and you'll see podcast, and basically it'll talk about any questions that you want to ask, and then just fill out the form.
All right. And don't forget Scout and Hunt Maps, offline all the time with the information that you need to be successful. And always remember to hunt the habitat. And thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. See you next time.